Hi, everybody. We are here in Yosemite on ancestral lands of the Miwok and Paiute with Beth Rodden. Beth, you have had an amazing free climbing career. You have the first ascent of Meltdown, a 514C trad route. You have multiple free ascents of El Capitan. And last year, your evolution with body dysmorphia was featured in the pivotal short film, This Is Beth. And now you've just finished writing your own book, which is an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations. Thank you so much for having us here today.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, I'm honored.
In 2014, you became a parent. Let's take a second and think back to our first few weeks with a newborn.
Yeah, it was intense.
What were you feeling at that time?
I feel like what wasn't I feeling at that time? What they talk about hormones and emotions are really true. I had a really hard physical postpartum. So I was in bed for a month, maybe a little bit more than a month. I couldn't even walk to the bathroom without having to crawl. So I felt really pretty broken and alone and sad, but also, ecstatic that I had this, new little kiddo and baby.
In my first few months as a parent, I learned about the concept of matrescence, which is basically adolescence for moms. And it's this period of awkwardness that we go through because our identity, our bodies are changing. Did you feel an identity shift when you became a mom?
When I was pregnant, I felt my identity shifting a bit. However, I thought that there was a clear end point to that. As soon as I had our kiddo, that would change and I would go back, kind of like bounce back to my old self. But then when my recovery and the beginning of motherhood was so different than what I had imagined, it kind of forced me into this, new mindset. Pretty reluctantly at first, I'd say, because I really had a lot in my old identity. But then over time it was, I do think it's kind of been the greatest transformation that I've been through.
What were the things that allowed you to survive those first few months?
Girlfriends, family, my husband, stubbornness, being excited, being in love with our new kiddo, all that sort of thing just kind of pushes you through,
I also had a difficult postpartum recovery period, and I spent time looking on social media trying to find information logistically about how to get back out climbing. And I didn't find much real world advice about the specifics of like how to get back to the crag with a toddler. Do you have any tips or tricks from your experience or your friends that you could share?
So I feel like some days we would try like all of our might, all of our willpower, and we couldn't get out of the house. It just didn't happen, for whatever reason. And other days it kind of came easier. I think having as much patience, with yourself as you can, and having as much patience with your kid as you can, which is really hard in the moment. And just trying to readjust expectations. If you do have the fortune to having friends that also want to try and do the same thing, it always helps. I feel like it's like safety in numbers, parents can tag team and parents can take turns watching the kids while the others climb, or the moms can climb, or especially for kids, it's always so much more fun to go out with other kids rather than just your parents, So I think that really helps.
One thing that surprised me was bringing toys and books was just a waste. It just took up extra space in the pack. Babe was way more interested in leaves and rocks and the environment, which was really nice. And now that he is eating solids, I never leave home without a grilled cheese sandwich. Can you share a couple of your favorite baby or toddler-friendly climbing areas?
Fontainebleau in France was amazing. For the most part, it has really big open areas. It's flat for the kiddos to toddle around. A lot of people use strollers there. We actually took the Strider bike there several times. Joshua Tree works really well. Yosemite works well. You can like look in the guidebooks, see if it's like cliffy, see if it's, open. But I think the more space that the kiddos have to explore and to, walk around, and the less energy it takes for the parents, because you're not worried about them like cascading off a cliff or whatnot.
I heard you mention, and this is Beth, that you breastfed. Did you have challenges breastfeeding?
Oh man, did I ever. It was a huge struggle for us. And like, I had 3 super serious mastitis infections where I had to take antibiotics, and I had to go get like an ultrasound to see if I needed surgery because the ducts were all clogged. And it was really hard for us. But that said, after we kind of sorted out some things, like our kiddo had a really severe tongue tie. So like my nipples were bleeding, and it was a big struggle, like a huge struggle for us. And I just wish there was more about that. Like literally, like in the hospital, they were like, you'll have colostrum for 2 days and your milk will come in, and best of luck, and you're like, okay, great, this is nothing. And, if I didn't have the resources, I was really fortunate to have the resources to hire a lactation consultant and then figure out about the tongue tie. But otherwise, I think I would have just kind of assumed that, well, I'm going to have bloody nipples or give up breastfeeding, because it didn't happen to any of my friends. And so it was, felt like something was wrong with me, something was wrong with us. But getting that knowledge really helped.
We also had a really difficult time breastfeeding, and I was so committed to it. I had nipple blisters for the first 4 months. I went back to work full time at 4 months, and I was so unprepared for pumping. The lack of resources generally in society for nursing moms is really unfortunate. And I also had this idea that I would give birth and like get back to my life and climbing, and the reality was so different from that. I felt like I was a failure because I couldn't fit this thing back into my life that had been so important. I have discovered bouldering since parenthood, and while I really miss multi-pitch climbing, it's been nice to take things at a different pace and stay closer to the ground. Has your climbing changed?
Yeah, my climbing's totally changed. I feel like my identity has shifted a little bit, and that I'm just kind of okay going out for less time or time with the family now than I used to be. The majority of my climbing time since becoming a mom has been bouldering, and I'm not sad about it. It's fun. I'm not good at it, so there's a ton of challenge for me there. And I mean, I do really like going up off the ground and doing long routes when I can, and that's become easier, as time has gone on. But
I am so happy to hear that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
In my newborn days, I saw a lot of social media depictions of outdoor families that were like very rosy, super smiley, and the light was perfect. And I wondered what I was doing wrong, because our experience was much more like this.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have a photo that might help moms who are feeling like they're just not living up to that social media fantasy.
Gosh, I don't know if I have a photo, but because of my such bad mastitis infections, I had one of my husband's shirts, and I just like cut with the kitchen scissors like holes out around my nipples. And so I would just like walk through the house and like milk's dripping, and I'm like crying, and I'm like, I'm just like, oh. But then also you're like in love with this new little thing that you have. I don't know. So it was just like all the things wrapped up in this.
I love that. I thought I had managed the situation 2 weeks in, and I went to answer the door for a delivery man, and I was like, he wasn't looking at me in the face, and he's like, I'll just sign for you. And I'm like, what is going on? And I walk back in. I have Babe in my arm, and I look in the mirror, and I was fully just hanging out at the bottom of my shirt.
Totally. Some things don't matter as much anymore. I mean, just like giving birth, I was like naked, screaming in a room full of strangers, and I like could care less, or I don't know. You're just like, whatever, does it matter? Not really, you know?
After you became a parent, did you notice your risk perception change?
That's a good question, and I get that question a lot. And I never know how to answer it because I don't feel like I made this conscious decision. I don't feel like I felt differently when I'm climbing, but I feel like it's just been this gradual change for me over time. You know, like I'm not going and climbing El Cap in a day, like right now. And that's not just because of motherhood at all. That's because of a myriad of reasons.
It's the same for me. I struggled more with the idea of climbing the way I used to in that first year. I was like, how am I going to feel when I get back to that? And honestly, I don't know if I will get back to that. Is there anything from your climbing experience that has helped you in parenting?
Being able to have patience and perseverance and see the big picture. You know, like if you're working on a big, long climbing project, like free climbing El Cap, if you get overwhelmed, you know, then it doesn't help you. But if you can break things down and take it step by step, or like in parenting day by day or hour by hour, I think that always helps.
What would you say your family's secret sauce is for allowing you to have time to pursue your own endeavors?
Childcare, friends, sleep, and then honestly being able to have girlfriends to be able to talk to be able to go climb with, to do all that sort of thing has been super helpful.
You just finished writing your book. I have to say it again. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's the title?
It's called A Light Through the Cracks.
And what excites you most about what you've written?
I think I'm still solidly in the camp of, was this a good idea? Do I really want this out there? So I don't know. You should ask me that in maybe a year or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
But my next question was, how was the process of writing for you?
I actually enjoyed the process, right? Because it was like this relationship I had. You know, I was like, I'm going to go work on the book. And I would like go into my own little world and like go on these tangents. And sometimes I'd follow it one way and sometimes I'd follow it another way. And it was a pretty cool thing. What made me really helped me along the way was I think I would have appreciated having a book like this at a lot of different times in my life. You know, like when I was a young teenager and really impressionable in the comp scene, or when I was like an angsty 20-something, or when I was a new mom or whatever, maybe it would have helped you. And so, but still solidly in the camp of maybe nobody else needs to read it.
A few years ago, you wrote an op-ed for the New York Times, and I really appreciated that you mentioned that you loved sharing wisdom with other athlete parents. If you could share the best wisdom you've heard about balancing things as a parent, or just wisdom in general that you want to add, what would that be?
I think somebody told me once, and I feel like this has really helped me a lot, is they told me the rocks aren't going anywhere. And that really helped me because I feel like I've always been so anxious. I'm like, I gotta get this done now, you know, like now's my time, and then I can do this thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I'm like, I like to plan and control and execute, you know? And it's hard to hear, but try and give yourself as much grace as you can in parenthood.
Beth, we've covered a lot of ground on a subject that is rarely covered in climbing media, if covered at all. Thank you so much for sharing your space and your time and your wisdom. I think, like your book, this is really going to help a lot of parents who are in the thick of it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, thanks for making a space for this. I think it's wonderful.